I am really happy to be here today. I'm really excited to talk to you all. I hope you're excited to hear about regulations. Maybe, maybe not. But it is a good topic for this group, as regulations are extremely important and impact most of all of you here in this room. But before I get into the meat of my presentation, I do want to take a few steps back and just give you all a brief overview of AmericanHort and HRI. Actually, mostly it's HRI. HRI stands for the Horticultural Research Institute. We are the foundation of AmericanHort. AmericanHort is a trade association that represents the entirety of the green industry, from greenhouse production, nursery production, retail, landscape, I know I'm forgetting some, indoor floriculture, and what have you. And HRI, again, is the research foundation of that. HRI is a 501c3 organization who exists to, as our mission statement here says, to direct, fund, and promote the green industry, the entirety of the green industry. HRI was founded in 1962. Our only agenda is success of the industry. We were founded in 1962, quite a while ago, in association with ANLA, if any folks remember ANLA. But since then, we have broadened our scope significantly, and so we're not just representing the nursery group anymore. And I, as Nina introduced me, I am the research programs administrator there. So one of the things that we do is we directly fund research. And the reason I'm explaining this to you now is I hope that you will understand why we do what we do and how we do what we do. And also, too, I hope to get you involved in our organizations in some way as well, to energize you. I really love talking about HRI. So, but we directly fund research, and we do this through an endowment. The current amount of the endowment is around $12 million, and the interest that is earned from that we use to fund research projects. Some of them are with USDA, most of them are through university. We just announced last week the projects that we're funding for 2018. There are included within that 2 Boxwood Blight projects, one with Jim Lamondia, who spoke just a little bit ago, and then the other with Dr. Ping Kong, who's associated with Chuan Hong. So we're happy to support these research and other efforts as well. Where this money comes from, this is what's most important. This is why I like talking about HRI so much. This money comes only from the industry. As most of you probably know, we do not have checkoff programs available in our world. So when we have money for research, it comes from industry. I like to think of it as we don't have checkoffs, so they have to actually get out and write a check and send to us. And that's a big thing to do. That's a big step. So we are very excited to be able to support the industry in this way. Like I said, we were established in 1962. We estimate that we have directed over $7 million in research since then, directly funded. However, our biggest impact comes through our ability to leverage these funds. And how I'll explain how that works with the Boxwood Blight example. That's a great example to use. But for example, in 2015, we were able to leverage an additional $8.5 million to bring back into the green industry, and these were from funds from USDA NIFA, USDA ARS, APHIS as well, and yeah, more things. We also have a scholarship program as well. So if anybody knows of any good students who need support through their college careers, please look into our scholarship program. We award about $20,000 a year. So in terms of Boxwood Blight, what has our role been? And thinking about the need for regulations, do we need regulations? Boxwood Blight, as you all know, is a big deal. There are landscapes, private landscapes, there are historic gardens, public gardens. The estimate is that the value of U.S. boxwood is about $125 million a year. That could be a little more, it could be a little less now. From what I'm hearing is that boxwood sales are increasing and have been since about 2012, so that number could be higher. There's lots to protect, so there's definitely there a need, a reason to consider regulations. And I really like this map. It shows the breakdown of boxwood production and retail sales by the U.S., by state. Oh boy, it really doesn't look great here, does it? Well, if you'd like to see this, please let me know. I'm happy to share it. It just shows the breakdown by states, in which states, basically Oregon and Ohio and California, are very heavy on boxwood. So, what has happened with HRI? What have we done to help the boxwood blight situation? As Christy said this morning, we consider ourselves a first responder in once boxwood blight hit in the United States, once it was confirmed. We established a fund. I know it's a horrible name, EITPBBF, and I do not know what that stands for. I know the E is emergent, and I know BBF is Boxwood Blight Fund, and that's it. We established quickly an emergent fund in 2012, and in 13 and 14, we funded about $16,000 worth of research. As Christy also said, IR4 was involved in some of these early efforts as well. And the bulk of the research early on was focused on control efforts, fungicide efficacy, cultivar susceptibility, resistance assays, and what have you, things to work while we were in the crisis mode. Since then, though, however, again, HRI's strength is through leveraging. From 2014 through 2017, APHIS alone has allocated over $2.7 million towards boxwood blight research. That's a huge number, and a lot of that comes from HRI support. That does not include additional funds through ARS, USDA ARS, through the Floriculture Nursery Research Initiative, FNRI, or FNRI as some folks call. There's additional funds that come into there too. So this is $2.7 million in a period of 4 years, is a significant amount. Again, our initial put in was $16,000. So that's where our strength comes in leveraging. And our current boxwood blight efforts, what have we done lately in terms of just HRI? Our newest thing was on February 1st, we released a two-page document front and back just as a resource, to serve as a resource sheet. We were approached at the MANCH show last month by a couple of nursery folks who said, we would really like to have a one-page document with some pictures of boxwood blight that we could give to our customers to let them know about the disease, that we are considered gold standard growers and what we do. So we have that available on our website. We reopened this horrible named fund, then we quickly renamed it. And now it's just called the Boxwood Blight Fund. The reason that we reopened it and it started soliciting new funds is that we were also approached back in late fall of last year by a couple folks in industry to consider promoting or developing a standardized testing procedure where we could evaluate boxwood varieties in terms of their level of susceptibility or tolerance to boxwood blight. So we've picked up a little bit of steam on that. There will be a lot more information on that to come. I hope even within the next 2 weeks to know something a little more concrete. But again, we are soliciting additional funds for that effort there. We have, HRI has committed $50,000 towards that effort alone, and we've also received a commitment from at least one other state association, which we're very grateful, and we are seeking others as well. But again, this was another effort that was requested by industry. So I hope me telling you all that is a long-winded, really long-winded way of saying our industry is very progressive, we are very active, we are very involved in what happens, and boxwood blight is very important. So the current status of regulations. This is an actual APHIS testing facility we got to go to a few years back. So there are 2 states that currently employ regulations, Pennsylvania and Tennessee, most recently Tennessee. They're similar in what they've done and how they've got to where they are, but I'll walk you through the background to each. I'll start with Pennsylvania. This is boxwood that was actually from a production facility in Pennsylvania. This was taken well before boxwood blight was even thought of, at least within the US, in my world anyway. And these have Phytophthora. So regulations in Pennsylvania started in June 2016. And when it happened, it was a really big deal to the industry. It was, oh no, what's going to happen? How many other states are going to follow suit? What will happen? And really not a tremendous lot has changed. But the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture had determined at the time that a quarantine process was the best way to proceed and manage, and their primary objective was to protect consumers and the landscape, but they also wanted to protect producers as well. But this was all spearheaded by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. And it was spurred by the increasing number of positives that were found within the state. It was first found in 2012 in Pennsylvania. It has been more widely found in re-wholesalers as they're bringing in material and then reselling it. And then the number of positive sites or production areas has continued to increase. Fortunately for Pennsylvania, all of the positives have been traced to out-of-state producers. They do not consider Boxwood Blight to be established within the state of Pennsylvania in terms of landscape or even within the nursery production world. And so if they like to keep it that way with their regulation. Now Tennessee, on the other hand, it's sort of similar but a little bit different way how they got there. Tennessee actually began 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, in February. This was entirely requested by the industry. A couple nursery producers down in Tennessee approached the Tennessee Department of Agriculture and said, we think we need regulations in our state. And this group also insisted on having a phytosanitary certification component to their regulatory status there in Tennessee. I'll cover that in a little bit more detail here shortly. So that's very unusual. And their primary goal, obviously, is to keep Boxwood Blight out of production in Tennessee. And how they came about also by positives, increasing number of positives that were found in the state. But they found it first in 2014 at a garden center. And then most interestingly, they started finding it on cuttings. By show of hands, did anybody hear about the poor Boy Scout troop in Indiana back at Christmas time? Yeah, there was a Boy Scout troop in Indiana who was found to be selling Boxwood Blight infected wreaths. And it's a horrible story. And they'd been shipped in from another state, and so they had to be destroyed, and they recalled and destroyed everything. Well, Tennessee first found this in 2016 in their holiday season. It was found at a big box store. And since then, they've found it on greenery in a couple other areas and other locations. So they are most concerned about the greenery and the cuttings issues being brought back in. I don't believe that's covered under the Pennsylvania regulations currently. And again, all positives were traced out of state. It's not considered to be established in the state of Tennessee, either landscape or production. So how these requirements work for each of the two states, they're both similar in that in order to ship, nurseries must implement a best management practices-based compliance program and enter a compliance agreement with the state regulatory agency. And again, as I said, Tennessee went a step further in requiring a state-issued phytosanitary certificate to accompany the shipment. This may cause some consternation in the near future, and even the Tennessee Department of Ag recognizes this, which is a good thing. The inspections, at least on the phytosanitary certification, inspections must have been conducted within the last 30 days, so that at least you don't have to do it every week. And the TDA also, as I said, they recognize that refinements and changes may be necessary as they get going. Again, this is all brand new to them, 2 weeks old, roughly. So how the best management practices, or the BMPs, how that works is they follow the BMPs that were developed by a collaboration of HRI, AmericanHort, and the National Plant Board. These best management practices, or BMPs, are available on our website. In fact, that was a major change that we got done less than 2 weeks ago. It is front and center on the, front and lower right-hand corner, but it's on the front page of the AmericanHort website now, so it's much easier to find the BMP document. I encourage you all to look for it there. And if you have trouble finding it, please let me know. I'll send it to you directly. We most recently revised this document in the fall of 2017. Just in terms of all this research that's being done, the BMPs needed to be updated and to reflect the most current research. The BMPs overall just provide a guideline for scouting, mitigating both accidental introduction as well as local spread, and then of course in the worst case scenario, if you do have an infection present, how to contain the pathogen and eradicate it. And I threw in some samples just to give you an idea what the BMPs look like. For example, it's inspect mother plants for signs and symptoms prior to taking in cuttings, and suspend the use of fungicides on new plants during the holding period. I believe Longwood Gardens in their BMPs that they talked about, they had both of those listed there too. I'm not sure they're following our BMP document, probably not, but In any case, those are some really good solid BMPs, and there's many more. And it's a voluntary agreement. So the future, what does the future hold in terms of regulations? I have heard a tremendous amount of Boxwood Blight infections that occurred in 2017. I'm a plant pathologist is my background, my education background, so I really struggled in writing this slide. 2017 was a great year for Boxwood Blight. And maybe that's not the best thing to say. So Boxwood Blight flourished in 2017 in many parts of the country. And as a result, we've seen increased damage, increased visibility, and a lot more infections out there. For example, this was a site I visited earlier this year, last month. Again, the pictures aren't great, but it was a beautiful landscape situation that was just covered with Boxwood Blight in a couple different locations. So, but again, it's hard to see with the coloring, unfortunately. My overall guess is that it's highly likely that more states will continue to regulate as a means of enforcement. I have it on good authority that we will see probably another state announce something in the very near future. Highly likely, so there should be 3 states here very soon. Our recommendation overall as HRI and AmericanHort are as follows. We do recommend voluntary adherence to the BMP compliance plan. Of course, our document, it was formed in conjunction with the National Plant Board. It really is the document that should be used. Under agreement, again, with state plant regulatory officials. This will help reduce the need for regulations. HRI and AmericanHort both do not recommend, or we are not advocating for more regulations by any means. We prefer this all to be a voluntary compliance program. But we do recognize that until widespread adoption is achieved, states will more likely increase their amount of regulations. I think it's been said several times today, the best method is to prevent infection, prevent it from coming in. So, and that's how the BMPs are designed.